So what is the protocol when you've discovered a mass grave like this?
John Hefford and I were human rights investigators, and I am a doctor. But we are not forensic experts. And so we felt equipped to say in our reporting to Physicians for Human Rights and in our debriefing to several key agencies back in Mazar about what we saw, we felt equipped and empowered to say that we had seen just what I described to you, this vast area, several football fields in size on both sides of this road, disturbed earth with the tracks and disturbed with human remains and human clothing. We are not in any position to say how many people were buried there. And we were not really in a position to say how recent it was, except that the earth was so obviously recent that we could say that. And our next protocol is to talk to Physicians for Human Rights and get the forensic team with adequate UN permission and UN protection in this time to come and take a closer look at the grave.
Well, let me bring in a forensics expert into our conversation. Dr. Nizam Peerwani is joining us by phone, and he conducted the autopsies of several bodies found in this mass grave. He's an advisor for Physicians for Human Rights International Forensic Program, and he's the chief medical examiner for 3 counties in Texas. Dr. Peerwani, thank you for joining us. So when you were told about this mass grave and asked to investigate it, what did you do when you first got there?
Well, it's a pretty large grave, about 60 meters by 16.5 meters. There was obviously a disturbed dirt. We could still see that. And as noticed earlier, there were a lot of fragments of clothing items and surface bones, many of them bleached. We were concerned about mines, of course. So we had the team with us, and we did a surface mine detection to see if there was anything there. Once we were certain we were safe, we began to do test pits. And we were very fortunate that within a very short time we were able to locate the perimeter of the grave. We did a rather large excavation, and we were able to locate 15 bodies that were in this area. 15 bodies were just a part of a very large grave. To put that into perspective, now these bodies were not buried in the Islamic tradition, in the sense that it was not a burial site, an Islamic burial site, as you would normally see. These were just bodies that were thrown. The way they were located, and they were about a couple of meters from the surface. We were able to pull out 3 bodies, and I did a rather complete autopsy on those 3 bodies. And they were just sampler bodies in the sense that there was no way we could examine all the bodies. We did not have a team to do all that. We were able to establish, first of all, they were males, and we did some anthropomorphic studies, and we were able to establish the ages. The first male was 18 to 23 years of age. The second was 25 to 30, and the third was 35 to 45. They were wearing typical clothing items, which we were later able to identify as those worn by the Pashtun tribes. In addition, they were also having black turbans, which is very typical of the Taliban's clothing items. And so we felt pretty comfortable that we were working with Taliban bodies.
What were you able to determine from the autopsies you conducted?
Well, the objective of the autopsy was to decide if I could establish the cause of death. I was able to say with great degree of confidence that they did not die of any blunt force trauma. They were not strangled. They were not smothered. They didn't have sharp force injuries or firearm injuries. I was also able to say they were not starved to death. I was able to document presence of fat, subcutaneous fat, and there was some foam stored in the large bowel, which means that they had recently been fed. And so really, one has to decide on the cause of death in the context in which the bodies were found. That's number one. But also by exclusion. Frequently in forensic autopsies, certain types of death have to be established by ruling out all other types of death. For example, an unwitnessed seizure death or a sudden infant death syndrome. So in this particular case, the negative findings of trauma and the fact that I was not able to demonstrate starvation and other findings such as this made me conclude that they are really suffocated to death, especially because they were pretty young people, and there were no organic diseases that I could document in the organs that were still there in the body.
So you were able to determine that the cause of death was probably suffocation.
Yes.
And that the people in the grave were probably Taliban based on the articles of clothing that you found.
That's correct, yes.
So can you estimate from the size of the grave how many people may be buried there?
I would say certainly several hundreds, if not a couple of thousand. I think that the size of the mass grave, which is 60 meters by 16.5, could hold, depending upon how the bodies were stacked in other parts, as many as several hundred, so at least 1,000 or 2,000 bodies.
Well, Dr. Peerwani, I want to thank you very much. I know you're on vacation right now, and I really appreciate you taking some time out to talk with us. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Terry.